Hi, everybody. We're back today with another episode of Howie's Hometown Heroes, where we feature business owners, entrepreneurs, and community members who are doing extraordinary, amazing things right there in their community. Today, we're in Philadelphia with my good friend, Lawrence DeMarco. He's a family law attorney doing all kinds of things, helping families out in lots of different ways. But we'll get into that in a little while. Well, let me tell you stuff about you might not know about him. So first of all, he's very proud of his family, which I know another member of his family very well. So that's really fun. He's got a YouTube channel he's been on for 5 years. I'm doing it like less than a year. So I'm like a novice at all this kind of stuff. So that's really, really cool. I've checked out some of his videos. They're really, really good, really good. And he's really proud of the work that he does for families. He's been doing this kind of stuff for 30 years. How long have you been doing your job? And can say you're still passionate kind of about doing it. So it's really very cool. So thanks for being here, Larry. I appreciate you being here.
Howie, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here and excited.
Yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun. So family law has lots of crazy dynamics going on, between emotions and spouses and kids and all kind of stuff. What was going on in your life at that time to push you in that direction or drag you into that direction?
So for the most of the 31 years, I was a general practitioner. I dabbled a little bit of everything the first few years out of law school. Then I was primarily a litigator, a personal injury and workers' compensation attorney. Then things didn't work out with my child's mother, and I found myself somewhat unwillingly in a custody litigation over my son. That started mostly maybe a decade-long what's known as a high conflict battle. There's other words or other terms that are somewhat technical, but bottom line is things were very litigious and emotional and intense. And during that time, I learned, I became very, very disappointed in my profession, the lack of help lawyers were. I believe a lot of time, I hate to say most, but I will. Most of the time, they hurt and don't help in one way or another. So that's what brought me into mostly custody law, trying to fix what I think is broken and something that I think it's kind of a black eye on the profession, how the system works, or should I say, doesn't work.
Wow, interesting how that goes about. I mean, I know so many people who have been divorced, and the kids are the worst. Come out of it no matter what. I mean, there's no good way for that to happen for sure. So that's really good that you've kind of figured some stuff out that I'm sure can help a lot of other people. And sorry you had to go through that, but at least now you're in a position where your experience can really make a huge difference in people's lives.
I like to think so. I am developing and adapting and trying to spread the message of what I teach through another thing that you mentioned, my YouTube, my technology and video creation is a way that I try to educate the public, ways not to get hurt in court during that time of conflict between a former loved one.
So really most of your stuff revolves around the child custody aspect.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. I think because that's probably the most emotionally charged area of people splitting up, right?
Absolutely. I actually taught a program, and I don't think I made it through one of 7 weeks of teaching this live without tears streaming down my face as I'm trying to teach. It's very emotional. I'm emotional about my family, and it was the hardest time in my life. And like I said, the courts are part of that issue that make that more challenging because of financial incentives, a lot of different financial incentives that kind of make things worse.
Well, maybe this kind of leads into this. So what are some misconceptions people might have about that whole process? I mean, I guess it starts with the parents. I mean, somewhere they decide, man, this isn't working anymore. And then, okay, then it goes downhill real fast, I'm sure. So what are some misconceptions that people have once they're in that thinking stage of splitting up? Uh-oh, I'm sorry.
It's hard to articulate without this tear duct starting to pour. But the fact that people think that you're not still family after you separate is a misconception that we in the English common law is what we call court system. Basically, the entire globe that speaks English has an adversarial system. And with family law, when people divorce or separate and there's children involved, divorce without children really is a different animal, which is why I specify that I talk about child custody. So you have lawyers that are trained. Their entire law school is to be a zealous advocate for your child, for your client. But you really can't separate a family unit even when they're going through a custody battle because you're tied. There's a third entity. There's a family that does separate, but the entity of the family does continue through the child. And lawyers have an opposite training to see the opposite. So there is an inherent, extremely destructive tension destroying what matters to that child, but the child's not the client, which is often why a guardian ad litem or an attorney for the child is often appointed, and that person usually is less capable or less trained, less skilled than even the two lawyers. So it's a disaster from the start. It's a system that's broken on arrival, but yet it's one of the most important things in society to make a good, healthy society function is the health and well-being of a family. But statistics are almost half of us don't make it in marriages. 40 to 50% of children are born to unwed parents. So it's almost the default, or it's at least half. So we're destroying half of ourselves in society. We're having these soldiers, these civilized warriors fight and destroy something because it's approached in a backward way.
In a backward way. Oh, okay. So now, all right. So I kind of get that. So but there are other, I don't say and there are other ways of resolving that kind of conflict. So there's like mediation and dispute resolution kind of people who put stuff together. Are they any better, worse, different? Like how do they blend into the rest of this?
My initial entry into this area of law was ideally I wanted to be a mediator, and I put up a website that said mediate, don't litigate. The problem is what do people think? You say misconception. So what do people think? If I have a plumbing problem, we call a plumber. If I have an electricity problem in my house, I call an electricity. If I have a legal situation where I have to go to court, I call a lawyer. But with a family law system, we should not have that reflex. Your reflex should be a mediator, a social worker, a therapist. Because if something that important is broken, you don't need to fight and make it worse and create deeper wounds when you already have a natural wound from the separation. You really have to heal that first as a general matter before moving forward for the benefit of the child. Remember, I'm mostly talking, almost only talking about when children are involved. When if a starter marriage doesn't work without children, it's a very, very different thing. You could have financial situations going on. That's a different story. But when there's children involved, you never can separate from that family unit.
Yeah, for sure. And does it matter how old the children are?
No.
Not really. Okay. I was going to say, like, there are some, I know a couple who just separated, but their children are in their 20s. They're all, I don't know any of the details other than that. Does that
Oh,
come?
how old the children are from 0 to 18, or if they're adults, of course. So in one way, it matters, because I always thought, well, look, things are hard. I only have to get till my child is 18. But
Yeah,
then you have to remember your child goes on, maybe goes to school, gets married, attends ceremonies, does important things.
yeah,
There's holidays
yeah.
where the child really wants to be with his family,
Emily.
or hers, as the case may
Yeah,
be, during holidays, and his family is you and your ex.
yeah.
So yeah, that was a great incentive to reconcile and extend an olive branch to my ex. And we've, after a brutal high conflict was called a battle,
Yeah,
we have spent very lovely holidays and meals together, once we realized that we we're still a family through our child. So it really changes your perspective.
oh, good.
And it's a lesson on forgiveness,
Yeah,
healing, um,
yeah.
and moving on.
Right. And I guess in somewhat gratitude that you've resolved at least that part. Like right, it's not something that eats at you constantly. I don't
That's
want to put
right.
words in your mouth, but it's
No,
like,
no,
yeah,
no, that's right. It doesn't happen by accident. It's a decision.
decision.
It's a
Yeah, there you go.
conscious choice.
Mm,
And we both made that conscious choice to be a to be civil and to co-parent for the benefit
okay.
of our
All right,
child.
good. Cool. All right, very good. And it took a long way to get there. It took a long time to get there. And all
That's right.
right, all right.
Sure.
All right. So things don't get resolved instantly for anything almost. So this is certainly something that makes it even that much more difficult.
Sure, and it helps to keep that in
Yeah,
mind as you're going
yeah, right,
through the
absolutely.
hard times. It makes it a lot easier. The nicer you are early, the less there is to heal and forgive.
Yeah.
So if you can
Oh,
always remember
uh-huh.
that one day you're going to be, probably celebrating a wedding, your child's
Oh,
wedding,
yeah.
graduation. If you can
Grandchildren.
remember things like,
Mhm.
attending
Right.
parties
That's
together
right.
for your child, through your
Right.
child,
Mm,
it helps control the negative behavior.
mm. Yeah. So now you've got all those dynamics going on. How do you reconcile or explain or put together the legal aspects of what you're doing, just the mechanics of splitting things up and keeping the cognizant of the rights or the child and the parents and all that together. There's a lot of moving parts there.
Sure, the first thing that I think that you have to be introspective and know your own emotions, and know when you're acting out of pain, vengeance,
Mm,
or some other negative emotion. When you
mm,
can understand that, you can stop and catch yourself. So that's one thing. Now, in terms of legal, let's talk about custody, which is what people go to lawyers to work out the custody
yeah.
arrangement. A best thing to think about, or to focus on, is that children need both parents, so that if you can start at 50-50, or a presumption that you're both involved, you're both spending time, then you have less to fight about. If you want to move that needle 10% either way,
Mhm.
or someone gets weekends, someone gets weeknights, someone gets, 7 days a week, or 9 versus 7,
So,
7 to 8 versus 6. Excuse me.
either way.
So now we were in different jurisdictions. We had different school systems where I lived and where his mother lived, so that there was a dispute there. But that's something limited, and it's something objective. A decision's made, then you move on,
Move on.
and
Okay, good.
then it's about the child. But one thing that a way of thinking is, well, how would I work through this if we were together? And you try to get as close to that as you can, and that's how you
Mm,
do
I
everything and
like
work from there. And children, when they're teens, aren't really mature enough to make their own decisions, but you include the child just like you would if the
if
parents were
we're all
still
sitting around the
together.
table. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. All right, good. And you also hear, the stories about, well, maybe this is because if one spouse is not, I don't know, I'm gonna just think of an example, like cheated on and now really hates the other person for disrespecting them and doing all that stuff.
Sure.
With the children like out of the picture in the argument, but now the initial argument had nothing to do with children, but now the children are in the argument because we're splitting up. Is there some way to resolve that? Of course, you get that emotionally charged partner. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on that. I mean, kind of what got me into this to begin with is, at least with the video area, or actually more than just video, really, to get into family law, I met a group of experts called the Parental Alienation Study Group.
Wow.
And even within that group, there's a subdivision of high conflict training on how
Oh,
to deal with that emotion that you just
very
discussed.
specific.
It-
Oh, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
specifically. So um, that's actually been my subspecialty
Mm,
within family law, is dealing with that scorned lover
yeah.
situation where one parent feels disempowered and therefore wants to use the child as that weapon
Ah,
to
right.
even out, you know, so there is science and research on how to prevent, how to correct it once it's happened,
Mm,
and um, it's so expensive to go through a situation like that, which is actually how I got involved in custody law, not through a one-on-one. I don't think that that's financially feasible for 90, high
mm.
90 some percent. If you are in a war, a high conflict custody battle, that private lawyer is really not affordable. So you need something called limited scope representation, and you
Oh,
need to have a minimum level of knowledge of the court system, and to be able to function for yourself to a minimum degree. So what I've done is produced a training program for people to handle as much as they can on their own and only retain a lawyer for a fraction of what traditionally lawyers do, and
mhm.
that can reduce the prices more than half.
Oh,
But it's a time commitment for you, but
well,
rather than paying a lawyer somewhere between 250 and $700 an hour is the range, depending upon if you're in a,
yeah,
wealthy city or even a small suburb. Most people aren't earning that to be able to pay for 40 to 80 hours of
yeah,
the time commitment, because for you to do that stuff yourself, for you to take 40 hours off of work, it's 1 week of salary, 1 to 2 grand.
a
But to pay
couple,
a lawyer that week, you're looking at what a lawyer would make at 350 hours is an astronomical. You're
comical
looking at
amount, yes.
25, 50, $75,000.
$1,000. Sure, sure, sure.
So it's not sustainable. And if you really have an angry, scorned spouse who has some type of emotional instability, you're looking at
No,
six figures, which what I realized when I was interviewing people about how I could best help them, I realized that they're paying enough money to pay for their child's law degree or
yeah.
their own
Oh,
law degree.
degree.
And I thought, well, gee, family law is not rocket science. I could teach this stuff in 12 hours.
Yeah.
And if someone committed to a week of learning, they would be their own high conflict lawyer and save their house, their pension,
Wow,
their kids' tuition.
cool.
And that's the whole premise about what I've done in creating something called the Family Court Custody Boot Camp.
Wow, very cool. In fact, that was going to be like my next question anyway. So I'm glad you just got it right out there. That's really cool. So we'll put some links in the comments below about your website and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully we can help people kind of get their own act together and resolve their own issues. I guess it's some of the things I kind of make fun of. Some of the work I do, it's not rocket science, it's not brain surgery. Brain surgery is easy once you know how to do it. But even so, your stuff, you're even describing, your things as being simple enough. And I guess maybe the other question I would have is, you don't need a lawyer to represent you in a courtroom or before a judge, or as long as you kind of know what to do ahead of time. Is that it?
Absolutely. And let me qualify that a little bit. I don't recommend people be their own attorney
Oh,
in
okay, good
court.
point. Good.
In court.
Court.
Now, there are some hearings that are routine, that are non-substantive, that are status and simple, and you can handle those on your own, some types of conferences and things. But what happens in a high conflict situation, the trouble, the strife, and the conflict, for lack of a better word, is day to day. It's
Mm,
every day that people want to email their lawyers.
uh,
That information that you want to get from your lawyer, that day to day, how do a letter needs to be sent, a communication needs to be made, or we're in this gray area. There's a way to train for that gray area where you do not need a daily
oh,
consultant, because every weekend could be a new fight if
yeah.
you're involved in one of these a high conflict situation. And that's what my program is meant to teach:
Oh,
how to
that's great.
communicate, how to handle conflict, how to handle gray areas, what legal effect, what each day-to-day decision that you're making, rather than have someone think for you. I give you the tools, the information, the
Hmm.
law,
Hmm.
access to forms,
Yeah.
to see the whole picture, to be able to think for yourself. You still need your representative to separate you from the emotions, and to oftentimes speak for you, or
Yeah.
handle rules of evidence, or be your,
Okay.
your hearing lawyer. Uh, if you're not comfortable doing that sort of thing, I do recommend that you do have that third party,
Okay.
but not for what the lawyer wants to. The lawyer wants to pay for that, house in Italy, the vacation home. They
Yeah,
want
I'm
they want to
sure.
put their kids through all these separate schoolings, and they pad their own retirement. I want you to keep your own retirement. Let that lawyer make the living that those lawyers deserve when they're just doing their job, not the stuff that you don't need them to do
You do.
at $500 an hour.
Yeah. I remember I remember a year ago having a conversation with a family law attorney, and he said he would always tell his clients, "You can pay for my kid's college, or you can pay for your kid's college.
Right.
What do you
That's
want to
right.
do? What do you want to do?"
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's a training to explain to people how to use their time, or how to use their
Be more
lawyer's
efficient.
time.
Yeah,
There's an art to it. There's
yeah.
there's there's information that you need. And how I stumbled on this is, I thought I would be a limited scope lawyer, and I realized how few people did it, and what the curve would be to try and build a practice where I'm making 20 cents on the dollar what the traditional lawyer is making.
Right.
But and then one thing it said is, for you to be able to represent people in a limited scope capacity, you need to educate them on what you can and can't do. So I thought I would have to make some type of training problem where I could teach them
Oh,
efficiently. And I just realized how few people know what to do, and how that this need to train
mhm.
them. And I figured I'd be better
There
off
you go.
marketing this program and teaching. There's enough lawyers out there. There's enough family law lawyers out there, but there's not enough people who know what you know from going through a law school education.
Education.
I give a family law education in a week.
In a way, wow, that's kind of awesome. And you have some success stories that you could share about people who've gone through the program?
Sure, on
Yeah.
the website, there is 10 testimonials,
No, nice.
um, from about 16 or so people, but the other six still had rave reviews.
Mhm.
They post stuff, or they recommend me, but they haven't recorded a testimonial.
Oh, I
But
see.
no, listen, it's so the most common story, or statement I get is, "I wish I knew this. What you just taught me,
Yeah,
I wish I knew earlier. The
yeah.
amount of savings that I would have had." And it's a recommendation for anyone who is earning less than 750,000 a year. This
Oh,
course is for. If
that's
you're
low.
earning hourly, if you're working 40 to 50 hours to a point where you may earn an income of $750,000 a year, you might want to just have an attorney.
Yeah, okay.
But if you're making $250,000 or
Or
under, you
under.
are saving dramatically
Okay.
if you take
Wow.
this program.
Right. Well, cool. Well, that's certainly a majority of the population for sure.
Right.
Is way
And
under
that's
that.
who I
That's
yeah,
way under
look,
that.
there's people in Beverly Hills that want their
Yeah,
own lawyers
yeah,
and
yeah,
you know, CEOs and execs in that top 1% of
yeah.
1%.
Yeah.
Sure, you need that lawyer,
Yeah.
but the average working person wants to be taught
Okay.
and needs more information to be able to save time and handle a high conflict situation
Yeah,
themselves.
exactly. Very cool. Very cool. Well, is there any, so is there anything more about that? Is there anything, I think that explains pretty much what you're doing now
The
for sure,
gist,
right?
yeah, I would say
Pretty
that's
much.
the gist. Other
Well,
than
that's
Q&A, no,
okay.
I
All right, we'll
feel
see that.
satisfied in
Yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
what the boot camp is.
Good. So now what other, I mean, is this a trend? Are you, like, you sound like a trailblazer in some way, but are there any other things going on in the family law world or custody world that you see coming, in the future, or where do you see
Well,
things going?
so yeah, to be more specific, what I hope is to create a not just national, but a worldwide trend to change the family law area to be people handling it mostly themselves,
Mhm.
judges expecting people to come in themselves,
Yeah.
and really just wanting that lawyer for the hearings with testimony, rules of evidence, and things like that.
Okay.
And people to understand, hey, I don't need a lawyer to take care of the whole thing, but most people making their own decisions by engaging mental health professionals
Oh, that's even,
and mediators.
yeah, yeah.
That's where I hope that's
Nice.
what I would like to see happen.
Good.
Now, I guess that other trend that you mentioned. So uh, I think, like, I love YouTube, which is to me the leader. Well, but it's more than just YouTube. It's YouTube, TikTok. I like social media, video, social media.
Yeah.
I believe is a vehicle where people can learn what they
Okay.
otherwise can't find elsewhere because books are too dense and thick,
Mm.
and only the average person under 44 years of age is new study. The average person reads less than 10 minutes, whereas the average person under 44 watches 6 hours of video screen time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So that is where content is being
It's being
made.
made.
And one thing about a video is the whole online medium is to give as much information in as short as a period in a shorter period of time as possible because
Yeah.
there's such competition to give value fast.
Yeah.
So it's a wave of young professionals trying to teach a whole lot real fast.
Yeah.
And that's what my program is. And that's what I also do on video. My program is really a premium version of what I'm posting online for free. It's
Anyway,
just organized and synthesized and put together
nice.
in a very practical manner so you don't have to go digging for it
Mhm.
because social media wants you to post trendy stuff. But an online program is the way you can organize it in modules, topics, and in order. Whereas it's really harder to do in social media
Yeah.
to organize anything. You're really posting
That's fine.
chronologically.
Yeah.
It's very difficult
Oh,
to make something and time expensive. So it's
right.
the premium it's a whole business model of what's going on online. People
There you
give
go.
away their product for free, and when you find and learn about them, I have a fan club in Australia.
Wow.
That's you can you have a worldwide reach because you're giving away such valuable stuff for free.
Yeah.
And then what that does is gives you an opportunity to, from your great free content, to put it all together into something valuable and time efficient that people will pay for because you're saving them
Gives
time.
them time to really
That's
absorb it.
right. And that's
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
product is now.
Nice.
It's always has been. It's what a
Yeah.
lawyer's product
Sure.
always has been, something saving people time or
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. 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 Well, very cool. Well, great. Well, Larry, this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate it. I can think of half a dozen people who should have done this before and maybe are in that situation now, and you can really help them out. So we'll certainly try to help them out for that stuff
Be a
too.
pleasure.
And we'll put all the links in the comments or wherever we're going to put them,
Sure.
to really get people directed to you. So
Great.
if there's anybody out there who, some people who are at least as driven as Larry is to helping people out, let's, send them my way, and hopefully we'll get them on the show. So just remember, whether it's your family, your business, or your community organization, remember, it's money that make those wheels keep turning. Make sure your money's working in the most efficient way possible. Thanks for being here, Larry. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.